Okay, if we can just start, I mean, maybe in terms of subscription-based model, I think everyone understands it fairly well, both the IT providers, the end users. Clearly, it's got plenty of advantages, but there may be some limitations. Just, I guess, a sort of your thoughts as to where subscription-based model is at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, of course, Phil. So obviously subscription-based models have been with us for a while now, and they're almost ingrained into the fabric of the channel's sort of commercial models, if you like, and they're definitely here to stay. And I think with recent sort of macroeconomic and geopolitical sort of things going on over the last sort of 12 months or so, I think what we're finding in the IT channel, and especially obviously servicing some of our MSP partners, is some of the subscription based model is a little bit limiting for either them or their end clients. So we're seeing sort of a bit more of a spike in terms of sort of outsourcing some of those remote based services that MSPs would have previously done. So, and I think that's where we're seeing a big drive in the consumption based models. They've been consumption based models have been here, again for many years, but they've seemed to be superseded and the forgotten cousin of the subscription based models for obvious reasons. But I think now where companies need to have a bit more flexibility in their commercial models and agility to sort of flex those commercial models, that pay as you go type of environment is becoming more and more popular, but to deliver a pay as you go environment is quite complex.
Yeah, so in terms of pay as you go or consumption-based services, I guess, it's good for the end users, I guess, for no other reason than it maybe keeps the IT providers, I won't say honest, but more on their toes, should we say? Because obviously, if you've got a subscription for a year or whatever, once you get complacent, but you maybe don't give the customer the attention. But if it's pay as you go, then you've got a vested interest in ensuring that the customer is getting what they want, etc. So I guess just your thoughts as to how good pay as you go consumption based is for the customer, if you like, first.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's not a case of complacency and subscription-based models not providing that customer experience. They absolutely do so. But I think in terms of by offering more sort of lower barrier to entry, if you like, services such as these pay-as-you-go models, that what that does, it builds up trust very quickly because you actually are having to do the do. They're consuming what they need. So in its true sense, they're only going to consume more services from you if the services you're providing are quality and reputable and to that sort of outcome that they're desiring. So yes, absolutely. I think the piece for the end client is we are very much in an end client driven industry now in terms of the outcomes. Long gone are the days of the tech vendors leading the industry in that sense. They're very much subservient, if you like, to a lot of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Hence, there's a much broader partner ecosystem service delivery model in terms of how we're delivering. So yeah, I think for the end client, I think consumption based is definitely going to provide a higher degree of probably being being closer to your sort of MSP or your services provider in that sense, because the goal with the consumption based model is still to drive them to a subscription model at some point, because when it scales, it generally is more cost effective to be on a subscription model.
Yeah, and I guess the other caveat is that the IT provider, the MSP or whoever's providing that consumption-based service has to have the, if you like, the infrastructure and the support to ensure, because we're talking obviously about quite complex environments these days, and maybe the coverage of where these services are available. So just how difficult and or easy is it for people to stand up consumption-based services, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it is complex to your point. I think certain there's only certain businesses out there that can provide that at scale because they need to leverage, to your point, they need to leverage a broader infrastructure. These generally are environments that need to be a bit more vendor agnostic. So, because the outcome you're trying to achieve comes from multiple technology sources. So yeah, absolutely. I think the piece in which where that market's going is this is almost another it's another tool in the salesperson's armory, if you like. It's seen to complement and not compete with subscription-based models, and I still think subscription-based models will have the sort of the lion's share, if you like, of the market. But actually, what's happening well through our MSP partners in terms of those subscription-based models when they can deliver the subscription-based model and that OpEx environment still to the end client, but they might decide through some of their partners that are delivering the service on their behalf to actually pick and choose some that are consumption. And as long as there's an SLA attached to that, and there's obviously the metrics around it to ensure that sort of a managed services contract is being adhered to, if you like, then it just means MSPs can be a little bit more commercially savvy in terms of how they set up their contract to their end client.
And in terms of the advantage for the product, obviously, if customers are wanting that flexibility to be able to provide it, it's great. But I'm guessing, I think you mentioned earlier, the low barrier of entry, potentially, obviously, of a subscription model, people have got to sign up for a minimum period, minimum cost, maybe, whereas pay as you go or even pay as you grow, there's much more flexibility for the customer. But I'm also wondering slightly against that, is there a problem, I guess if you've got subscriptions and on January the 1st, roughly how many people are going to pay you how much for the next 12 months. Obviously, pay as you go is a little less predictable, shall we say.
Yes.
Is there any sort of potential problem with that, or do people can kind of learn from the trends of all the data they've got and more or less understand what's likely to happen? How difficult or not is it to predict pay as you go, I suppose?
Yeah, yeah, it is more difficult to predict and to forecast for, from a budget perspective, if you like, and especially if your business is set up on that sort of OpEx subscription-based commercial model. So, but yeah, the idea, I think, what we're seeing is where a lot of MSPs are being asked for different outcomes from the end client, and also where some MSPs are struggling to retain talent or to actually expand their teams because resource is expensive and people and quality, obviously people with the right skills are very hard to come by. So to hit a price point which are very much based around a subscription model, I think MSPs are now what we're seeing is things like L3 services around cyber or networking and that type of thing, where they would normally have had a team full of people to sort of answer those queries and to get them to resolution. I think those resolver groups are sort of a bit sort of they haven't been invested in the same way because of the cost of living issues that we've gone through. Obviously, wage increases a couple of years ago. So, but the end client still has a price point that they have to meet. So I think for the first time that I've known in the last 20 plus years within the channel, from a channel services perspective, if you've got that infrastructure to provide those remote managed services to complement the MSP's existing proposition, then that has become a really attractive option. And the consumption base way that you sort of consume those services is what's really appealing for because there's no big commitment up front. We're not tied in for 1, 2, 3 years type of contracts, but it should go hand in hand with the subscription based model as well.
Okay, and sort of reflecting what's going on, you yourselves, Nebula, you've I believe launched a new channel service. So please tell us a little bit more about how it's addressing some of the things we've been talking about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think from our perspective, we're traditionally known as very much an on-site services provider. So we're providing everything from projects, surveys, installation, maintenance, that type of thing across the UK and beyond. But what we've been finding increasingly, especially from those MSP customers and obviously VARs as well, and some of the GSIs, is they they just like they used on-site services to complement their core offering, which was very much where their IP was and that based around remote services, and used us for on-site services to complement that because they haven't got either the depth of knowledge or skill set or unable to invest in that, expanding that proposition out remotely. That meant that they were coming to us and saying, okay, well, you do our on-site services. Can you provide us with L1, L2, or L3 related remote services around cybersecurity or networking or managing our Cisco Meraki estate, Juniper Mist, Fortinet, whatever it might be. And so where that hadn't really been a play before, because we can leverage our remote teams on a global basis, and those people are not needed to be on site, obviously, as it suggests. That means, we've got lots of credible technical resource who, do a lot of project-based work for us, which actually we can now make accessible through to the MSP community. So, so
Sorry.
yeah, so I think the piece why the consumption base is so relevant in that sense is it's almost the MSP can just sort of just sample it in small doses and see if they can integrate it into their own offering, and then we take them on that journey. So we've got some that are still doing it on a consumption basis, but we've got others who are consuming it very much on a subscription annual contract basis as well, just like it would be for a maintenance break fix contract, for example. So yeah, I think because we've got that infrastructure of technical assets, so people around the globe, we can sort of follow the sun around the globe in terms of providing that 24/7 service. We can ensure that we're covering the majority of the key vendors out there and their back office support function. And that is quite exciting. But the only reason we've been able to do that is because of that infrastructure we touched on at the beginning of the call. If you haven't got that infrastructure and that depth behind you, it's very hard to deliver a quality consumption based service in the first place, because you'll be very niche in a specific technology stack or niche in a geographic location. Whereas what we try and do is aggregate that out to become a much more broader global offering outside of just the UK.
Yeah, and in terms of developing that, I mean, you say obviously people were coming to you and asking for it. If you're happy to share, how did how did it come to, who had the idea at some stage? Was it, loads of people saying to you, well, they're asking for this, they're asking this, and someone said, hey, why don't we stand this up? Or did you was it always the plan? It'd just be interesting to understand that, the genesis of the idea.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, time to revenue for a services business like ours can be upward of 2 years from initial engagement, right? So we're not really interested in transactions in terms of a sales process. Ours is about getting a thorough understanding of the strategic sort of plan of our partners, where they're going from a technology perspective, what verticals are they moving into and what territories are they moving into, and we sort of look what success looks like for them, and then we work with them to work backwards. And part of those sort of discovery stages, if you like, with a number of our partners. So, ones in particular around the sort of the global SIs and some of the UK more primary MSPs as well. And what we were finding is, from a talent perspective, it was getting very difficult for these people to find the right people, but not just find the right people, but actually utilize those people, because obviously they're quite a costly resource. And the utilization was very sporadic in terms of, you don't know when a fault call comes in or a resolution needs to be done, and that type of stuff. So very much the case of, once the cost of living came about, sort of 18 months ago, and then with some other elements that have happened more recent, what's happened is it's just escalated and made it a much more, well, I suppose, expedited that issue. And so there's almost become a really big gap in that space. And so what Nebula thought is, well, we've got access to that type of resource, and we've got readily available, because we use it today for ourselves, right? We hook in. So it probably took us about 6 months to build the proposition, to get everybody up to speed, and to make sure that proposition was ready to hit the road running. So I think MSPs and the GSIs and likes only know what they know, right? So they've never had a need to buy this type of service before. So by providing some sort of user case studies, which is what we're hoping to do over the coming weeks and months, it will hopefully show that not only can on-site services be partnered out through the likes of a Nebula or one of their other partners, but actually these remote services are, there's the ability to do it with the remote services also.
And just in terms of pulling it together, I mean, was it pretty much sort of repurposing and organizing existing resources? Did you have to put in significant investment to fill any gaps in what you were planning to do? Just be interested to, the logistics of how you went about, standing up the service.
Yeah. So obviously there has been some significant investment in terms of the setup, because you need more dedicated resource to be actively providing this service on day one. So, whereas in the past this might have been resource we were using more sporadically. So we've got a mixture of resource around the globe. So we've got resource, that ranges from APAC through India, and then the Middle East into the UK, and then the US. So we're trying to cover as many markets and opportunities, but the actual remote service offering that's really, I guess, getting the most traction at the moment is very much at that sort of L3, L4 level. So this is where, when there's an escalation on a call, and there needs to be some really in-depth technical triage, you've got those people readily available. You've got those people, and if, because we've been able to provide a consumption-based model, going back to the original question, that means it's made it much more. It's a better sales enabler, not only for us, but also for the likes of our channel partners, because they can provide that offering into the end client as well. So the end client, in essence, is not seeing a disruption in service, even though the MSP or the GSI might be going through some challenges in terms of resource or talent, or expanding into new markets, whatever those challenges may be. So yeah, I guess it's been very opportunist, if you like, in the sense that we've moved quick from knowing there was a need there, but definitely that opportunities accelerated in terms of some of the things that have happened, and obviously things like national insurance contributions in the UK going up for local businesses. That has a big impact on the bottom line of the operating profits of a business. So anything we can provide and help to mitigate that risk to a business as companies go through the transition, because there's always a transition period of all changes, for when there's a big business change, right? So, but businesses are quite resilient and they do deal with it, but so it's almost become even more relevant to a wider subset just through um, the way sort of current affairs in the UK in particular are going at the moment.
Yeah, and in terms of, you said obviously you're hoping to get case studies and then push them out so that more people understand. But in terms of, it's relatively early days, but feedback so far, anything you can, obviously probably can't name that, but just the feedback you've got, is that, are you pretty happy with the reaction you've got to what you're doing?
Yeah. I think the reaction has been in the first instance, it's been a bit more from an operational perspective of our channel partners. There's been a bit of relief that that option is there, in all honesty, and and I think as they start consuming parts of that service, regardless of which part of that remote managed service they're accessing and in what technology stack, once they get comfortable with consuming that from us in that way, what we're finding is it's really easy then to take them on the journey into some other areas that we can provide remotely, because it's taken away a real pain point in that sort of channel partners business at this moment in time. So yes, I think the initial feedback, there is that element of relief, because these operational teams have been under increased pressure to retain SLA and to retain service quality to the end client. And then obviously as that gap's formed over a period of time, that's become harder to service. And filling that gap, I think, from an operational perspective, means we, we've gained a lot of trust and I suppose guidance through that process in terms of those ops teams. So rather than it be a sales to salesperson type of transaction, it's not it's almost the other way around. It's almost like we've listened to the client, we've listened to what they're trying to achieve, and we've been able to, because of our size and our agility, we've been able to adapt that proposition to suit that need. Now, how that service looks today and how it's evolved in the last 3 months, for example, it's changing every day, if I'm being honest with you. So, you know, like anything that's new to the market, it's only when you give somebody the choice to something and they go, oh, by the way, does it do this as well? Or can you do this? And oh, we've got a problem in this department as well. So yeah, we're even doing a lot of things around L1, L2, more of that sort of contact centers, level one service desk piece as well, where large teams in the UK, the overhead that sort of brings is a big headache for a lot of sort of FDs and that type of thing, to actually, to consume them costs but keep the service at a price point that is workable. So we're even seeing it not just taking people up the stack, in terms of competency, but also we're finding ourselves, because of our capability to deliver that remote type of service as well, is people are actually coming down the stack as well, ironically. So because it's an operational cost, and that's the thing we're trying to help the channel partner with.
And I guess if there's a sort of key takeaway, is for both the channel but also their customers to understand that, or to demand, if you like, or expect real flexibility from a provider such as yourself. So it's not good enough for people to say, no, it's, you've got to subscribe to this or this. You pretty much, you say, you're constantly evolving. So within reason, obviously, whatever people are wanting you to do, you'll do your best to provide that. So is that what people should be expecting now from a provider such as yourself, a real degree of flexibility and working alongside them, to help them with their particular problems?
Yeah, I think so, Phil. I think we always see ourselves, for example, as the MSP to the MSPs, if you like. So what we try and do is say, right, okay, what type of managed service do you need from us to sort of supplement your core offering? So anything that's contextual outside what is core to your business, but your customer is still demanding that. What does that look like? And in the past, it's been very much like I said before, the on-site related services, and and where I think that model was all based, where volume drives value. It's all about leveraging volume in that sort of setup. All that we've done in essence in the model is applied that same mindset, if you like, and we've applied that to the remote world, because obviously more devices can be fixed remotely now, and there's not the need for on-site visits and all that good stuff. So, but actually, as those products, if you think of Internet of Things and you think of network devices, there's more devices than ever before out in the network. It's just different devices. So your traditional network as server storage, data center piece, that's still a growing market. But actually, it's when you get down to the smaller devices, it's access points, it's CCTV, it's vape sensors, it's all those society-based technology products, how we consume things are different today. So you have to have a much more scalable, agile, and I guess more competitive pricing model, which is where the remote services come into play. And and that understanding of that marketplace is essential. So our core background is networking and security. So we haven't deviated outside of what we're good at to make this work. We've just got a different route to market to service our clients by doing that. So we haven't gone left field with a different technology stack or something that is not our bag. We've actually stayed in that sweet spot of networking and security. We do other things as well, obviously, but that is really where we put all our sort of focus into those areas, because they're growing markets. It's just the products are changing, and to remain relevant, you need to evolve the proposition.
That's been great to chat, and maybe we can catch up in a few months' time, talk about some customer examples. But
Sure.
it sounds exciting, and it's always great to touch base with you. So, Richard, really appreciate your time. Thanks very
No,
much.
no. Thank you for your time, Phil. And as always, great to chat, and look forward to catching up soon.